Well, welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna DeCesare, president of Middlesex Community College, and sitting across the table from me this morning is Don DeCesare, who is a pro at radio. I'm just an amateur.
Oh, you're a very professional, and it's all about genuine, and you are genuine.
Well, thank you, Don. It's probably impossible that any listener in the listening audience doesn't know who you are, but you are the
President and General Manager of WLIS and WMRD Radio.
And you know, recently, I listen to your radio station all the time.
It's our radio station.
And recently, I've been hearing people say LIS-MRD. What's that all about?
I can't seem to break them of that. The call letters are WLIS and WMRD. It's actually two different radio stations that we combine effectively into one, and they have two different licenses, which I should tell you, congratulations to all of us, because they just got renewed by the federal government for
how long?
8 more years.
8 more years, all right.
Of all of this.
Takes us to 22, right?
Yes,
yeah.
To 2022.
Yeah.
So their official designation in the roster of the FCC is with the W in front. So it's WLIS, WMRD. But this being the informal 21st century, I guess folks tend to drop the W.
Yeah, shorten everything. Well, you know, you don't have to put www in front of World Wide Web. That's gone. You can just put WLIS, WMRD.net if you want to look up your station.
If you do that, you'll find us.
It's historically a K or a W, right? Is that kilowatt?
No.
What is it from?
Well, this is a long story, but I'll do it as quickly as I can. The first commercial radio station in the United States was KDKA Pittsburgh, and they went on the air in 1920. In fact, they covered the presidential elections of 1920, and I was there. But in any event...
That's not true.
No, that's not true. Afterwards, when commercial stations began to pop up, the FCC, which was formed at that time, decided, well, we got to have some way of designating them. So they took the Mississippi River and decided that all radio stations west of the Mississippi River would have a K in front of them, and all radio stations east of the Mississippi River would have a W. Of course, KDK already existed, so they grandfathered that in, and then subsequently, for commercial reasons, they grandfathered in a station in Pittsburgh called KQV. That really shouldn't have been a K. But in any event, that's how they all come. So all radio stations east of the Mississippi River, with a very few exceptions, begin with a W.
That's very helpful, since I'm still new to east of the river.
Yeah.
And that river...
So all the stations in Minneapolis have a K.
Yeah, KSTV.
Because
well, there's WCCO.
Yeah, I think they're probably grandfathered.
Yeah. So, okay, our beginning portion of this radio show has just disappeared. It's just vanished. Time speeds up when I'm sitting with you, Don.
Oh, my.
So we're going to have to take a break because those are your rules.
Yes.
And we'll come back in just a moment because we've got some really great stuff to talk about. Well, welcome back to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm talking today with Don DeCesare, who is the president of the radio station. So, you know, I'm a little bit intimidated by the
Well, you're the president of the college,
yes.
And I'm here on your campus, this beautiful campus. I'm intimidated.
Thank you. We should arm wrestle.
Okay, we'll do that.
So I invited Don to the show because he was our guest speaker. I guess we don't call him guest speaker. I was our commencement speaker at our 47th annual graduation from Middlesex Community College, where 339 people got degrees and certificates. And the weather gods in my world and the meteorologists in your world were both working together to make sure it was a perfect night.
I threatened the weatherman.
And it worked. I don't know what you said, but it worked. So I wanted to ask Don to talk about how it was that he formulated his commencement address, because I think those are really, really hard to write. And in fact, our student speaker that night referenced that you can go online and buy commencement speeches, which I found to be very...
It's a great world, isn't it?
It's amusing. I mean, you can buy term papers. Why not buy a commencement address? But I'm completely confident that you did not resort to do that.
No, I wasn't that smart.
So, in short, your speech began with a lot of references to what is available about us, any one of us, online, that you kind of don't even know is out there. And then it transitioned into some very, very serious legal issues here in the state of Connecticut about what's public and what's private, which to me is a very important discussion. But also, in the end, kind of ended up with the students, it's on the students' shoulders to sort this out. And somewhat of a caveat, be aware of the fact that what you put out there will last for an infinite amount of time. So how did you get even starting? Because you could have talked about the local food supply or running for public office, but you picked that. So how did you get there?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to do that. It was a great honor, and I really enjoyed it, although it was agony for me trying to figure out what was I going to do with it. And I went round and round. I did not buy any speeches, but I did go round and round in my brain about what is it you're supposed to do if you're asked to speak to graduates of a college. And I haven't attended very many of these, but I've certainly seen excerpts of them from time to time on the news and so on. And it seems that most everybody says something like, be true to yourself and get on with your life and don't look back and that sort of thing. And I wrestled with that, thinking, well, maybe that's what I'm supposed to do. That's kind of what the protocol is I should say something uplifting about, your future is ahead of you or whatever, the Kurt Gowdy line, all your future is ahead of you. Yeah. So I wrestled with that, and I couldn't quite put my pen to paper about that, because I thought, well, first of all, that's what everybody does. And secondly, who the heck am I to tell them how to live their lives? I haven't done that well with mine, so why would I be able to tell them what to do with theirs? So I just didn't ring right for me to say that to people that I don't know. So I started thinking about, well, what is it that I do know? And obviously, I know a lot about this business, but I didn't think that was particularly pertinent to everybody. There were some broadcasting students in your group, but they weren't a large number. And then I've spent, as you know, and maybe even the audience knows, I've spent a lot of time over the last year and a half thinking about the issue of privacy, because I got put onto a task force by the state and became co-chair of that task force, and we talked about and wrestled with the whole idea of what is private, what is public, what does the law require. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, this is really what this decade is about, in effect. We've got Edward Snowden floating around out there, we've got the NAS, all of these things are going on, and no one had really tried to pull that all together and say, okay, what does this mean to the average person? They're all news clips, they're all interesting tidbits, and some of them are even frightening, but what does it all mean? And I thought, well, that's what I think I can say to them from the experience of spending a year and a half thinking about it, because they're going to need to spend a lot of time thinking about it. I'm going to be gone, but all that stuff is still going to be out there. You can't take it back. And I don't think people think enough about that, either in general from a personal point of view. When they throw a picture up on Facebook, it seems innocuous enough. Here's my barbecue and here's all the people having a good time. That is pretty innocuous. But one thing leads to another. If you are at a barbecue, in fact, I think I used this image in the speech, you've got 15, 20, 30 people there. They're all taking pictures with their cell phone cameras, and you can't control that. You can't control the picture that is taken of you, like you could have even 10 years ago. Certainly when I was growing up, back in the Harding administration, you didn't have to worry about that. You knew exactly what was going on with pictures, and you knew exactly what was going on with whatever you might want to say about yourself or publish or have published. And that's not true anymore. I mean, we got bloggers, we got Facebook, we got Twitter, we got all of these things, and no one has really said, well, hold on a second here. What does this mean to me and to my, and I'm going to use a word now that people don't think enough about, privacy? I don't know that I want you to see the picture of me with a beer in my hand from the barbecue if I didn't think that it was a good picture. Even though it's a true picture, somebody took it and it exists. I don't know if I want people to see that. So we have to think about that. And once you get past the innocuous like that into anything else, we really do need to think about, how do we control what's being done with us? I don't, by the way, have the answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it can. This is the problem. I don't know that it can be.
Searching for an answer is at least one constructive step. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about the intersection between technology and human affairs. And this is an instance where the technology has outpaced us. I mean, you're right, because on your phone, you can take a picture of anything. Then once you put it on the web, it's gone. It's not gone. That's the problem. It's everywhere. So it's indelible.
Well, in this task force that I was a member of, I was able to go online and within 30 seconds find pictures of murders as they were taking place. from various entities that had them up there for various reasons. Some perfectly sensible reasons, because they were used in evidence at a trial or whatever it might have been. Others, not so sensible. And putting aside the whole issue of children being able, if I could do that, they're probably faster at it than I am. But putting that aside, the issue of minors being able to look at those sorts of images, even adults being able to do that and manipulate those and recall them for other reasons. The whole prospect of Newtown, the video game, really, really, really scares me. And frankly, there's very little to prevent that. Under the First Amendment, it probably can't be prevented. So what do you do about the images? And that's what we wrestled with as a task force. By the way, we didn't quite resolve it. Well, we did resolve it, but the legislature didn't buy it. But in any event, the issue is not going to go away. Right. I think it is the issue of this decade.
So to pick that for the graduation speech was really meaningful.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, and I hope that it caused people to think about it. You know, with 339 students graduated, I can't remember how many actual diplomas we give out because not everybody follows the rules and comes to graduation.
Yeah.
But there were about 1,000 people there. So, you know, these are parents and uncles and kids and cousins, and every single person got a chance to hear that. So I was just very grateful to you that you took that moment to talk about them with them about something serious instead of, as we were saying earlier, all the platitudes. You know, your future's in front of you and all that kind of stuff. As you're talking, I'm thinking about two different things, and so I'll raise them and maybe we can mull over them. One is I have a cell phone, as everybody does, and in the morning, because I'm addicted to it, I open it up right away, and I get news blasts, and I'm trying to remember a day when I haven't opened it up in the last couple of months where there hasn't been a school shooting or a mall shooting or a deli shooting, the Santa Barbara one. I think he just went down on Main Street by the college. So there's all that violence going on. So that's one issue. And then the other thing that you really raised, which is that you can doctor photos. I mean, I think we have known that all along. Or the missing 3 minutes in the Nixon tapes, or, you know, I mean, that you can change the image. So you may give, as a result of posting something online, you may give people the ingredients for a visual image. But that's not necessarily going to be left alone. It can be changed to be even more damaging.
That is frightening unto itself, and it doesn't even take an enormous amount of skill anymore. There are so many software programs out there that sort of the average person willing to spend a few hours practicing can learn how to do all kinds of things with images, even with audio. And, you know, if you go on YouTube, God forbid, but if you go on YouTube and you type in, for example, man to woman, you can see images where you take a bodybuilder male and convert him into a model. It's not real, it's not true, but it can be done, and the end result looks awfully convincing.
Right.
Now, I don't know whether the bodybuilder offered his image up for that purpose or he didn't, or even if he did, does he still like the idea?
And can he actually claim ownership over the altered photo?
Right. That's another question.
Yeah, we have a lot of things. This is why we need philosophy majors. I'm serious.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
I totally believe that. All right, well, once again, following the rules of MRD-LIS, WW, we have to take a break, and when we come back, we'll wrestle with some more important issues. Thanks, Don. Well, I'm Anna Wasesha, and I'm back today with Don DeCesare, and we're talking about the important questions of public personas, public images, and then privacy. So what do we own, and what's our privacy? What are the boundaries of it, and what's public? So now, to turn this to another dimension, this college is expending a tremendous amount of the taxpayers' dollars, and some of our own, to build out a whole new media center. And I would say that puts all of those students who we are recruiting, and there are about 150 of them now, and we hope it would be great if there were 300 of them, into thinking about television broadcasting, radio broadcasting, music production, and social media. Because the kind of dark side of social media is cyberbullying. So social media, digital graphics, how can you alter a photograph or present it in a better way? So kind of the question is, if you ran the college, if you were running this program, what would you do to ensure that the students who come through it are thinking about those important issues of public and private? How would you do that?
I actually started a small insurrection among the Connecticut Broadcasters Association last year. I'm going to get to the point here in a second. It's pertinent the way I'm going to do this. We have an association among all the radio and television stations in the state. It's a wonderful thing. We get together periodically for board meetings. I'm a past chairman of the organization. And annually we have a convention. And typically it's a situation where people come together, do some personal networking. We have a few little seminars, usually sales seminars. Sometimes we have, what's going on in Washington type seminars. What are the regulatory issues that broadcasters face. And last year, when I was in the midst of this thing that we were talking about before, I said at a board meeting, when's the next time we're going to talk about ethics among ourselves? And what is our responsibility both to ourselves and to the public? And so we don't talk about that at all anymore. We just take it for granted. And the board decided that it was a good idea, and I actually put together a seminar. So coming back, and we ran that seminar, and it was quite well received, and we're going to do more of that in coming years. So coming back to your question, I think I would insist, if I were in charge of the program, which thankfully for all of you I'm not, I would insist that we have some component of ethics within the media. Not just ethics in general, I think they should learn about that as well, but what is my responsibility if I play with this image? What is my responsibility to the person from which it came, to the image itself? That's a whole question. Here's another example, and I will take full responsibility. When you folks select me to do this speech, you asked me for a picture, what your office did. And I was trying to find, I don't take very good pictures, so I was trying to find a picture that didn't look horrendous. And I found one that looked, more or less casual, which is kind of my style, and I sent it in, but I sent a note with it saying, take out the background of the picture. Now, that was with my permission, because it was a background that I didn't have control over, and it wasn't my right to use that background. So I said, okay, just take out the background, and somebody here in your digital image department did that. So there it was done with my permission. But suppose I had sent the picture in and somebody in your office had said, well, that doesn't look very good, which, by the way, would have been true, but it was, we'll just take it out without asking me. I don't know what the ethics of that is. I probably wouldn't have objected because it would have looked better. But I do think we need to think about all that. And do we have an obligation to ask? And if we get a no, what is our obligation then? Is it we have to say, okay, well, that's the way it is? Or how does the First Amendment apply here? Other laws, say the Connecticut has the Freedom of Information law. All of these things come into play, and we don't think about them very much.
So actually, thank you for raising freedom of information, because that was a way in which you nested the whole argument, right?
Yes.
That the history in this state is it was out in front on those issues.
Exactly. And the law is now 40 years old. It was done during the administration of Governor Grasso, right after the whole Watergate Vietnam business. And the state decided basically to make all public records public. And now we've been chiseling away at that for 40 years. And the law is now 29 pages long, of which 28 and a half are exceptions. And
can you characterize some? I'm curious, some of the exceptions?
Personnel records, for example, which are technically speaking legal records. I don't know what, the guy on the highway who's picking up the litter, he has a personnel record, Joe Blow. And, suppose you decide, well, I'd like to know all about who he is and what he does and how much he makes and whether he was ever disciplined and so on. Those records are not public anymore. They were at one time. I can certainly understand why that is. I'm not saying that it doesn't have some logic to it, but when you start piling one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other, what's left that is public? That's part of the problem. And that's a small, hoary example. There are others. And now we've got the crime scene photos from murders are now not public when they were public a year and a half ago.
I'm trying to imagine a world in which everything is completely private, and what you would miss as a result. So, part of the reason you want these sunshine laws is you have to first of all have confidence in the people writ large, that they, upon seeing something, might see something different than the inner circle of people who have access to it.
Well, if you want to take it from the positive point of view, even using murder as an example, there are people who understand crime scenes. I don't. You probably don't.
Yeah, right.
But there are people who do, and who study those, and who take it in a very serious, scholarly way. They now no longer have access. So therefore, we don't know that in looking at any crime scene, let's put Newtown aside because it's so emotional, but there's 100 murders a year in the state of Connecticut. So pick any one you like. Someone looking at that material in an academic, scholarly sort of way might say, well, you know what? Here's a new way I would like to suggest for responding to that. In fact, the truth is that exactly that happened with Columbine. After the Columbine murders, scholars did look at those crime scene photos, and they did come up with new protocols, which, irony of ironies, were used at Newtown. Mm. And it could be argued, I'm not sure I would, but someone could argue that Newtown would have been worse if the Columbine protocols hadn't been followed.
Right, right. So on the other hand, though, and just to remember this as well, sadly, that the Newtown slayings fits into a category, an emerging category of these somewhat random mass murders that take place partially because people have access to semi-automatic rifles and other kinds of artillery that they didn't have before. So there is a lot to learn about. I mean, I hate to think about it this way, but it is a trend in homicide.
Well, I hate to think about it too. To me, 100 homicides a year in a small state like this, no matter how they came to be, whether it was a lunatic in a place like Newtown, or your random drug murder in an inner city, deserves some consideration as to how it could be prevented in the future. And I'm sure people do think about that, but do they think about it as deeply as they could? And now they don't have as much access to material that would help them think about it as they used to.
And I think that's really important. So Rich gave another presentation yesterday that I heard, and it was actually very impressive, is that it's so important to actually have access to the real equipment that's used today in television and radio stations and all that sort of thing. First, he said there are some programs that basically hand people a $100 motion picture camera, if that sounds so old-fashioned, that you can get at Walmart and just say, okay, go out and make a documentary and bring it back and we'll grade it at the end of the semester. So one of the things that's going on there, though, is that, I mean, what that tells you underlying that is, yeah, there's professional equipment that you use, that you have at the radio station, but everybody can make films. And so how do we talk about this? Would make a great freshman seminar. It would, because it's so accessible, so inexpensive.
Well, personally, I am a contrarian about all that stuff. I think the capability to make videos, in particular videos, or even audios, now being as widely available as it is good. And I'm not saying that we will not always have to have a professional group of people who work with professional equipment, but the differences are narrowing all the time. I mean, back in my early TV days, good quality professional television camera, the beta cameras of those days, cost $60,000-$65,000, and you had two people to operate it. You had a video person and an audio person. I was there, so this is already more than 25 years ago, when we started moving away from that. And when we started giving early VHS cameras, I mean, they're now hysterically funny to see, but to individual journalists. And you had video journalists emerge as a class of people, even within the profession now. And in fact, presidential campaign coverage has changed completely as a result of that. You send younger employees out as combination reporters, videographers, and their stuff gets on the news. And it changes the way campaigns operate. And in fact, it makes them more public in so many ways than they used to be. And we've had gaffes as a result of that, where somebody out on the campaign trail didn't realize that, oh my God, that person is actually videoing me right now.
Right.
And while I'm talking to the waitress or whatever. So that has changed. But I do think it needs to be thought about. Here's the reverse for you. Suppose you're assigned to a campaign and the candidate says to you, I will tell you when you're allowed to shoot.
Yeah.
What
That's
do you do
another
then?
question. That's right.
If the person is in public.
Right.
Do you say, oh, no, you don't, sir. You're out here on the street. I can do whatever I want. And what happens then? If they throw you off the campaign bus, and so on and so on and so on.
Right.
All that's going to come up more and more.
Right. I think it would make a great first-year seminar to think through this.
I think it would.
Yeah.
I think having them think a little bit is not a bad thing.
Oh boy, I'm so in favor of thinking. I'm in the pro camp on that one completely. We have sadly run out of time, unless the president of the radio station decides that we can go on a 24-hour marathon, in which case We should try that someday.
We should do it as a fundraiser.
Yeah,
sometime.
it would be great. I'd like to see how far I can get. It's a relay. So this has been the Middlesex Moments radio show, and I've been charmed today, and I hope all the listeners have been too, by my guest, Don DeCesare, and he's just the best guest on the planet here. Thank you, Don, for coming to meet with me, and for any of you who haven't heard me say this before and you have an interest in the college, we are out there on the World Wide Web at mxcc.edu. Take a look sometime. I'm Anna Wasesha, president of Middlesex Community College, wishing you all a good day.